In this lesson, we're going to learn how to implement a password reset flow. And in order to do this, we're going to use our user role project we've been working with in the past couple of lessons. So to start with, what we're going to want to do is add a token migration and model to our application. So let's go ahead and dive into our terminal here, and let's do NodeJS make model. And let's call this token, and let's do -m to also create a migration for that. While we're here within our terminal, let's go ahead and install and configure the mail provider within Adonis. So npm I at AdonisJS/mail, and then NodeJS configure at AdonisJS/mail. So we're actually going to use AdonisJS mail to send out the password reset link to our users. So I'm going to be using SMTP utilizing Mailtrap. You feel free to select whatever driver is applicable to you. And then I'll take my instructions in the terminal. I'm going to go ahead and copy the SMTP driver env.ts variables here, and I'm going to jump into my project under env.ts and plop those right in there. Next, I'm going to go into Mailtrap and actually grab those properties. So I'm going to jump into my browser, hit show credentials. I'm going to wipe this bucket out after I am done with this lesson, so I'm not worried about these getting out. And then I'm going to jump into my .env, and let's see, SMTP host should be smtp.mailtrap.io, and you want to grab these instructions from whatever service you are utilizing. Since I'm using Mailtrap, that's why my host will be towards mailtrap.io. Grab my username and my password, and once we have that in there, we should be good to go. Next, let's define our tokens migration. So we're going to want a couple of additional columns here. So we'll do table.integer. Let's bind this to a user. So user ID unsigned references ID in table users, and then on delete, let's go ahead and cascade. Next, let's go ahead and do table.string and allow a type to be defined. I'm going to set this to not nullable, and then table.string, and this will be our actual token value. And let's limit that to 64 characters long and set that to not nullable as well. Lastly, let's go ahead and do table.timestamp expires at use tz is true, and we'll leave that as nullable. So this is actually fairly close to the API tokens table that Adonis will generate should you select API within your auth configuration step. So if you already have an API tokens table, you can utilize that table instead of creating your own here, but this will serve us since we are not utilizing the API token structure within our application. Next, let's go ahead and jump into our model, and let's define those columns. So at column public user ID, that'll be a number or it will be null. Let's go ahead and define that relationship as well. So at belongs to user, public user is belongs to type of user. Then we have a column public type of string, and then a column public token of string. And lastly, let's bind this token to our user from our user model as well. So underneath our belongs to for our role, let's do has many token public tokens has many type of token. And then to actually make this token relationship usable for other things beyond just the password reset, let's go ahead and add in an additional relationship definition. So has many token. Let's add in an additional configuration here for on query, and then we'll get back our query. We can query.where the type is specifically password reset. So anytime that we actually create a password reset token, we will give the type a value of password reset. So by limiting our on query to those particular tokens, we can now do public password reset tokens is has many type of token. So now we can reach directly for this password reset token relationship to create, delete, and what have you for our password reset specific tokens. All right, awesome. So now we have a token relationship set up to our user and vice versa. So now we can actually go ahead and easily create tokens specifically for password reset. And to make this even easier for us, let's jump into our token model here, and let's add a couple of static methods onto this model. So let's do public static async generate password reset token. And let's accept a user of type user or null. Let's also jump up to the top of our file here and import the string utilities from at IOC Adonis core helpers. And we can utilize one of these string utilities to actually generate out our crypto-safe random string. So we can do const token equals string dot generate random, which will generate a cryptography safe random string. We can give this a size of 64. And so now we actually have the token value that will save to our token record anytime that we want to generate out a password reset token. So next, let's do if not user. So if a user is not provided, we'll just return back this token. Otherwise, if a user is provided, then we will actually go ahead and persist our token to our user. So let's do const record equals await user.related. And since it doesn't matter whether or not we have that additional where statement for our password reset tokens versus just our tokens, we can go ahead and just specify tokens here and then create, provided our type of password reset. Set the, oh, we forgot to actually define this on the model. So let's do at column, date time, public expires at date time or null. And so for all of our password reset tokens that we create, we'll set them to expire at datetime.now.plus hour 1. So we'll have them expire 1 hour from whatever time the token is generated at. And then we'll go ahead and actually provide the token value. Once we have that, we can return our record.token. So we're returning back just the actual generated random string token value instead of the entire token record, because at the end of the day, we're not going to actually need the entire record, just the token value. In addition to this, before we actually generate out a token, we can expire any pre-existing tokens. So we can either do that via deleting the token itself, or we can update its expires at. It's up to you on whether or not you actually want to persist those records into your database. It's easier to delete, so we'll go ahead and cover the a little bit harder approach by updating our expires at. So let's do public static async expire password reset tokens. We'll accept our user. At this point, we can verify that we only have a user and it will be null. Then we can do await user.related password reset tokens .query .update, and we can set the expires at to date time.now. So we're getting all of the password reset tokens for this user, and then we're specifying that we want to update their expires at column to right now. So essentially, since right now will be in the past 1 millisecond from now, this is essentially expiring them. If you want to be extra safe, you could set this to 1 second in the past, but this will suffice. And then let's come back up into our generate password reset token. And right before we actually generate out our new token, let's await token.expire password reset tokens for the provided user. Next, we'll add in a method to actually grab the user from the token. So this will be the opposite of our generate password reset token. This will take in the token instead of the user. And then instead of returning back the token, it will return back the user that the token belongs to. So let's do public static async get password reset user. Take in the token. That'll be of type string. And then we can do const record equals await token.query dot. And let's preload the user from the relationship where token is token, where expires at is greater than our date time dot now, and let's specify that to be to SQL. Just for safety's sake, let's order by created at descending, and then we can grab the first matching record if there is one. And then we'll return record and the user off of that using nullish coalesce just in case a record is not found. And then lastly, we can go ahead and add in a verification method so that we can take in a token and verify whether or not it belongs to a user, exists, and whether or not it's expired. So let's do public static async verify. This won't be specific to password reset tokens, so we can just name it a little bit more vague as just verify. Take in a token of type string, and let's do const record equals awaits token.query where expires at is greater than datetime.now.toSQL.where token is the token value, and then grab the first matching record if there is one. And then let's cast it to a Boolean using bang bang and then return back the record. Okay, so now we have everything done within our token model. This is pretty much all of the APIs that we'll need to actually generate out, verify, and then get back our user from our password reset tokens. Now, if you have a lot of different variations of tokens that you'll want to create within this token model, it might behoove you to move these methods off into a service instead of directly on the model. But for right now, these will suffice for our use case, and it makes the API just look a little bit simple. Let's go ahead and rig up a controller to actually start implementing this. Let's jump back into our terminal. Let's clear this out, and let's do node ace make controller, and let's call this password reset controller. Pass in -e to make sure that that naming is exact, because it will want to rename it to password resets controller. All right, there we go. Let's jump into here, and let's start off with our imports, because we're going to need to import a couple of things here. So let's import mail from @IOC Adonis add-ons mail. Let's import route from @IOC Adonis core route. Let's import env from @IOC Adonis core env. and then the rest should auto import without issue. It does look like TypeScript is not picking up that we have configured our mail driver. So let's go ahead and just restart the TypeScript server there. And there we go. Okay, no more red squiggly. So within this controller, we're going to want 4 different methods. So let's do public async forgot, assign this to our HTTP context contract, and let's copy this. So we'll want one for send, another for reset, and a last one for actually storing the reset. So this will be send to send out the forgot password email, reset to display the reset form, and then store to actually store the password reset change. You could also name that update if you feel that's a little bit more applicable. So let's start at the top here. For our forgot, this is going to be in charge of actually displaying our forgot password form. So this is where the user will insert their email. All that we need for this is our view, and then we can return view.render password.forgot, and then let's go create that view. So let's jump into our terminal, NodeJS make view password/forgot. While we're here, let's also create one for reset. So NodeJS make view password/reset. All right, let's jump back into our code base, jump down into those files, and let's do @layouts/app. @section is content @end section. Do a div class column. We'll create that class here momentarily. We'll have an h1, reset your password, enter your email below, and we'll send you a password reset link. And for this, we will have a form. Method will be post action. We'll rig this up here in a second, but this will be route passwords.send. And within here, we will have a single input, type equals email, name equals email. And we'll do a placeholder of enter your email. Then we'll have a button, type equals submit, and reset password as the text for that. So we can give that a save. We can copy all of this and then jump into our reset.edge file and paste all of this. And then we can do enter your new password below. We'll change email here to password, new password. There we go. And then we're also going to want to actually append in a token into this form as well. So the input type equals hidden name of token and value of, and we'll provide this into the view here momentarily, token. And we can give that a save as well. Okay, so let's jump back into our password reset controller and talk about the flow of this. So as you might have guessed, first the user will reach our actual login page where they'll realize that they forgot their password. They'll hit the forgot password link, and then they'll jump into our password forgot page right here where they'll enter in their email address. They'll kick this off to our password send route, which will be within our password reset controller again, where we will generate out that token, persist it to the user if one's found for the email that they provided, and then we'll kick off that email where they will then click the link in the email, jump back into this reset file where we will then verify that the token is still valid. And then if it's valid, we'll show them a form where they can enter in their new password that will also send up the token along with that form to the store file where we will lastly verify the token one more time and then make the change onto the user's password. So we have all of the APIs rigged up for the actual token generation, verification, and all that fun stuff within our token model already. So all that we need to do is really rig it up. So within our send, and I can't believe this, but I forgot to import, we'll need to import the validator as well. So we'll do schema and rules from @IOC Adonis core validator. And then we will want to validate that the user is actually sending in a valid email. So we'll do request, response, and session out of our HTTP context. We'll do const email schema equals schema.create email, schema.string, rules of just email. Now, you don't want to verify that the email actually exists here because you want to be very vague about whether or not the email exists within your system. We'll attempt to find a user via the email that they've provided, and if we can't, we won't let them know because at the end of this request, all that we're going to do is do a session.flash. We'll give them a success message regardless, and we'll say if an account matches the provided email, you will receive a password reset link shortly, and then return response.redirect them back. And the reason you want to be vague here is because you don't want people guessing at what emails you have within your system, because if you were telling the user whether or not an email existed within your system, they could try out any old email like test@apple.com, find out whether or not that's within your system. If it is, then they could try to brute force log in a little bit more easily. So being very vague about this here gives a shadow of doubt on whether or not that email actually exists within your system. So once we have the email schema, we'll want to validate it. So we can do const to get back the validated email equals await request dot validate schema of email schema. Once we have the email, we can do const user equals await user dot find by, attempt to find them by that email. And then we'll generate out a token for this regardless. So token equals await token, and then we'll call generate password reset token and provide it in the user. Now remember, within this method, we are only actually persisting the token to our database if that user was found. If not, all that we're doing is generating out any old random token and returning it back. At the end of the day, we're not creating any records within our database if the user was not found. And then we'll want to generate out a link to our password reset page. So let's do const reset link equals route.make URL. You can make this a signed URL if you wish, password.reset, and provide it in that token. And then if we found the user, then we will want to await mail.send or send later, whichever you wish. Message equals message dot from wherever is applicable for your use case. So I'm going to do no reply at Adocasts.com to user.email with the subject reset your password, and then provide it the HTML. You can do this as an HTML view if you have a more structured HTML that you want to send, but I'm just going to send reset your password by clicking. Actually, we'll put clicking here within the link. So we'll do a href clicking here and then end that anchor. And for our actual href, we're going to want the full path, not just a relative path. So we'll want our domain. So to make this a little bit easier on us, let's jump into our env and add in a domain property and set this to http // We'll grab our host : and then our port. So it will be http 0000 and then our port of 3333, or whatever port our server ends up booting up with. And then let's also add that within our env.ts down here. So domain env schema string, give that a save, jump back into our password reset controller. And now for our href, we can grab env.get domain and then provide it our reset link. And that's all that we should need for our send method. And we can actually try that out before we move on any further to make sure that we have thus far working okay. Before we do that, let's jump into our layouts.app and add in that column class that we added in earlier. Display flex flow of column. It's just going to make it go into a column instead of a row. And then let's also jump into our welcome.edge and add a link to our password reset page. So where we have our login form, I'm going to put this inside of a div. And then we can do a href route password.forgot, forget your password. And there we go. Okay, and then I don't actually think we defined our routes yet, so let's go ahead and define those two. So routes, no, we did not. All right, so we have route.get password forgot, password reset controller.forgot as password forgot. I'm going to copy this because I'm having a little bit of trouble typing password. You could also put this inside of a group. So we have this one here will be a post for send, and it will be kicked off to send as password.send. And then we'll have reset, and reset. And then we'll have store, and store. Again, you can name that update or whatever you find applicable for that. We also need to make this a post or a patch or a put, whatever you find applicable for that. I'll just stick with a post to make things simpler. All right, and then let's go ahead and migrate our database. So let's do NodeJS migration. And now you can do migrate, rollback, refresh, reset. I'm going to do fresh to just clear everything out and then re-migrate what we have. So that will just drop all the tables and then run a fresh migration set. And the reason that we wanted to run that was to pick up our tokens migration that we created at the start of this lesson. So once we have that, let's go ahead and test out what we have so far. So let's do npm run dev to boot up our server, and then let's open that up. And then since we just ran our fresh migration, if you've cleared everything out, you'll need to create a new user. So let's do test+user@gmail.com. Give it some password. I actually don't know what I just typed in, so hopefully this does work. So let's go forget your password. Let's enter in our email. So test+user@gmail.com. Send that off. And actually, let's jump into that view because we didn't give ourselves any indication of whether or not we got a validation error or anything of the sort. And let's do flash messages.all and let's just inspect that. Let's also add that to our reset page while we're thinking about that. So flash messages.all. Okay, good. Jump back into our browser here. Let's try kicking that off one more time just to make sure that we get what we wanted back at gmail.com. All right, good. Remember, we're sending this back regardless of what happens. It's a little bit hard to read there, but it does say if an account matches your provided email, you will receive the password reset link shortly. The only way that this would not be received is if we failed the validation for the email check that we did. So let's go check out Mailtrap. And we do have our two emails. The most latest one is right here. So we have reset your password by clicking here. And it does go back to our localhost 3333 password/reset. You can actually click on that to verify that. We don't have this route set up yet, so we get nothing. And now, since we've sent this twice, we should actually be able to verify that our previous token was nullified successfully. So if we actually jump into our table plus here, take a look at our tokens, the first token that we generated right here should actually expire at the present point in time. So you'll have to take my word for it, but it is 502, or it's 503 now. So this is now expired out, and the other one is valid until 602. So we generated those pretty close back to back. There was definitely not an hour within there. So it did successfully expire out our first token that we generated. So that is working a-okay. So it looks like everything's going good so far. So let's go ahead and finish what we have. So let's jump back into our password reset controller, and let's finish up our reset and store. So for reset, we will want our view and our params from our HTTP context. We'll want to do const token equals params.token, and then const is valid to check whether or not our token's valid as await token.verify, and then provide it in the token. So remember, whenever we set this up, this will check whether or not the token actually exists within our database and whether or not it is still valid. So this is just a nice little pre-check for our user to see whether or not their token has expired before they actually attempt to reset their password. Now, there is always that chance that the token will expire between these two steps. If you want to, you can give them a little bit of buffer with your verification step, but that's completely up to you. So once we have these two, we'll just return view.render, our password/reset page, and provided that is valid check, as well as the token itself. And then for that reset page, we'll want to wrap this up in a if to check whether or not it is valid. So at if is valid, at else, and then end our if. So if it is valid, that's where we'll want to display our password reset form. If it is invalid, then we'll want to give them some type of notification that their token is invalid, and we'll need to run through the flow again. So we'll do your token is invalid or expired. Please try again. We'll do that for right now. A href route password.forgot to send them back to the start of this flow. And then we can actually put please try again, I guess, within that link content. Okay, so now we won't see this at all if our token is valid, and we will only see this if our token is valid. All right, so now we should be able to jump back into Mailtrap here and give this a clickaroo to test and see. Whoops, okay, so our token's actually not being appended onto this URL at all, so that's not good. Let's go fix that up. So I actually think that's just a param issue. So whenever we define the routes, I did indeed forget the token. So password reset is the URL that's being generated within our send method. So this is the one that we'll want token to be appended on as a route parameter. So if we give that a save now, we'll need to run through the flow again ourselves. So let's jump back into this page, do test plus user@gmail.com, send that off. We should now have a fresh password email where we now have, yep, there we go. That one's got a token on it. So now we can click on this, we can get this page here. And now you can see that this token's valid. So if we actually run through that flow one more time, test plus user@gmail.com, there we go, and click on the newly generated URL, this one will be valid, but if we refresh the one that we had previously just tested, it should now be invalid. And there you go, your token's invalid or expired. So again, we've just checked and verified that our tokens are being expired whenever a new one is generated. So last thing that we need to do is verify that the token's still valid at the time that this form here is kicked off, and actually persist our user's password change. So let's jump back into our password reset controller. Underneath store here, let's grab our request, response, session, and auth out of our HTTP context. So let's do const password schema equals schema.create token. So we want to verify that the token is actually being provided and it is still a string. And then we want to verify that our user has submitted a password. So schema.string. And then you want to make sure that you use the same rules that you're using for your actual registration step for your password here. I believe all that we're doing is a min length check of verifying that it's at least 8 characters. So we should be good there. Then we can do const token and password out of our request validate schema as password schema. And then const user equals await. Then we can reach for our token again to get password reset user and provide it in the token. So we'll get the actual user that belongs to this token. And then we can do if not user. So if we did not get a user back for that token, then we want a session.flash error token expired or associated user could not be found. Return response redirect and redirect them back. Otherwise, we can await user.merge, merge in their password change, and then save that off to the user record. And then this is completely up to you. You can send them back through their login flow if you wish, but since we've already gone through the step of making them go into their email, click a link to get back into here to reset their password. If they can reset their password, I think I'm okay to say they can go ahead and be logged in. So let's do auth.login and provided that user record, and then return, response, redirect to path, and point them to the homepage. So we give that a save. And now we should have our complete password reset flow rigged up. So let's go ahead and dive back into here, and let's try finish testing the second half of this flow. And let's give them some password. And we got an error. Let's see. So we got the token, we got the password, email. Okay, so I bet you this is rigged up to email still because we copy and pasted it. So let's dive into our reset.h page, take a look, and we have a name of password. Oh, it's the action. Okay, so password.send needs to be password.store. Give that a save. All right, now we should be good. Let's dive in back into here and let's give it a refresh. And then let's try resetting our password again. So there we go. All right, there we go. So now we're actually logged in as our user after we successfully reset our password. So there is actually one last thing that we're going to want to do before we call this lesson a day. So let's jump back into our Mailtrap here and let's click on the most recent password reset link that we just did. And you can see that it's still coming through and we're not getting this token's invalid or anything like that type of message. So we could actually utilize this token again to reset our password and everything would go through just fine. So what we need to do is invalidate this token after it's used. So we can easily do that by jumping back into our store method here. After we actually update their password, we can do another await, and we can utilize our expired password reset tokens and provide it in the user. And so this will go through and actually expire out all password reset tokens, not just the latest one, to make sure that everything is actually expired. So it will invalidate all tokens that the user has for their password reset flow instead of just the one. So if we come back in here, we could just use this one again to reset the password. All right, so we're logged back in now. If we log out, come back into here, click on the password reset link one more time. Now we get that your password's invalid or expired message because we've gone through and invalidated all of their password reset tokens. So now that should be everything that we need to do. If you want to, you can send them an email similar to how we did with the password.send route to let them know that their password has been successfully changed. That's pretty typical within the password reset flow, but that is going to be pretty much identical to what we did right on up here, just changing the actual HTML content. So I'll leave that up to you. All right, so that should do it. That is how you can actually go about adding in a password reset flow to your application.